After looking everywhere for a PlayStation 5, I finally got my hands on one about 2.5 years ago. But no sooner had I got through Astro's Playroom, something happened which meant the PlayStation 5 just began picking up dust underneath my TV. And suddenly, handheld gaming became the only way that I could really keep up with the hobby. Of course, PlayStation Remote Play has been around for years now, but it wasn't until the release of the PlayStation Portal 6 months ago that my PlayStation 5 finally sprang back to life. When the PlayStation Portal first launched, it was not shy of controversy. That's because although this looks like a successor to the PlayStation Vita, it can't actually play any games natively on the system. It's basically just an accessory for your PlayStation 5 that allows you to experience gameplay when connected to the internet using something that looks a lot like a DualSense controller. This kind of remote play wasn't anything new. You've been able to do it for years on devices like your phone or a mini PC like a Steam Deck. There's even a Backbone 1 controller which is specially designed to resemble a DualSense controller. But what really clicked for me when I picked up the PlayStation Portal for the first time was that this was by far the easiest way to get started on remote play. You didn't have to install a Linux application and then run some Python code to get it started. You simply connected it to your PlayStation 5 and you were good to go. And thanks to the fact this is basically just an LCD panel slapped between two halves of a DualSense controller, you also get all of those brilliant haptics that really make a difference when you're playing titles like Spider-Man or God of War. That screen, by the way, remains, in my opinion, one of the most impressive panels that we've seen on a handheld device.
What a goal. That's ridiculous.
Displays like the Steam Deck OLED have set a really high bar, and it would have been interesting to see what an OLED version of the Portal had looked like. But honestly, I think this was a great choice in order to keep costs down on what is already a pretty pricey accessory for your PlayStation, and the larger screen just makes it look really beautiful. The colours are vibrant and everything pops. If I've only got one criticism, is that it is quite easy to get a lot of glare on this screen, but if you buy a screen protector, then you're going to get that anyway. One very fair criticism of the PlayStation Portal is that upon launch it didn't work incredibly smoothly across everybody's internet connections. Particularly those who were using a mesh network experienced a lot of lag and latency within the first couple of weeks. I'm very lucky in that I never really experienced a huge amount of lag. It definitely comes into play when the battery is dipping and when I'm in spots that are quite far away from the main router of my house. But even after switching providers from Sky over to UFiber here in the UK and moving from that Sky router to an Amazon Aero hub, I've experienced very little problems so far. This is in part because PlayStation have done a really good job at continually updating the Portal. In fact, the latest update went out a week or two ago just to tweak performance for certain internet networks. There have also been updates like the ability to set an EQ on the companion headphones, the Pulse Elite and the Pulse Explore, which give me a lot of confidence that PlayStation is continuing to support this device and that it could continue to get better over time. If I could ask for one update for PlayStation to make next to the Portal, it would be to give us a little bit more warning before it cuts out of battery. You do get a little icon that pops up, but sometimes it suddenly cuts out unexpectedly. And the problem with playing a remote device is that the PlayStation is still running downstairs and potentially getting you into hot water in whatever you're playing. I would really like some kind of feature that gave you a proper indication that the battery was about to shut off, with the option to pause your gameplay so that you can go and switch off the PlayStation properly wherever it's stowed. But that's another cool thing about the Portal, because it's so similar in feel and design to a DualSense controller. When you do switch between devices from a living room to a handheld setup and vice versa, everything feels very familiar. You don't have to rewire the buttons in your muscle memory, which as I'm getting older is a lot more difficult for me to do. And so this has been the ultimate momentum carrier for PlayStation titles, and without it I definitely would not have had the time or the opportunity to get through games like God of War Ragnarok and complete the entire map on Spider-Man 2. Alongside the PlayStation Portal, we got the release of PlayStation Link technology. It's kind of a proprietary Bluetooth solution that allows Sony devices to connect to each other on low latency frequencies. The PlayStation Portal was launched alongside two brand new headsets, the PlayStation Pulse Explore earbuds and the PlayStation Pulse Elite headset. This again was a very controversial move because in order to kind of force people into buying these headsets, the PlayStation Portal does not support Bluetooth. So if you don't want to use a wired connection, you will have to pick up something like the Pulse Explorers in order to truly make the most of its audio on the go. This kind of first party lock-in is not something I or anybody particularly wants of any company, but I would have less problem with that if PlayStation Link actually worked as it was advertised. On both the Pulse Explorer and the Pulse Elites, I had very many connection issues that made it really difficult to actually get the headphones connected to the PlayStation Portal. Often I have to completely reset my Portal so that it can engage in a new connection with the PlayStation Link. While both the Pulse Elites and the Pulse Explorers come with planar magnetic drivers that give you a really great detailed audio spectrum with brilliant spatial audio capabilities, without perfect fitting ear tips, the PlayStation Pulse Explorers lack bass and can be quite uncomfortable to wear because of their non-traditional form factor. The Pulse Elites, on the other hand, are much more comfortable, but there are some really annoying features, like the fact that a blue LED indicator shines persistently as you're gaming, which makes it impossible to use them in a dark environment, and always has this little blue light appearing in your peripheral vision. I really hope that with some firmware updates, little problems like that can be avoided going forward, but had I not been testing them for this YouTube channel, I would have been pretty agreed to have spent £150 and £200 respectively to pick up either of these headphones. Even though I've spoken very fondly of the PlayStation Portal, there is one lingering problem that the PlayStation 5 has, and that is simply how few games are getting released these days that really interest me. Maybe I'm just getting old at this point, but it feels like as my life has become busier and more complicated, games have become obsessed with open worlds and crafting to the point that it's impossible to actually complete them in less than 100 hours. Now, if you're going to give me a really rewarding world to explore like that in Horizon or in God of War Ragnarok, then I'm completely happy to play it bit by bit and take 3 to 4 months to actually get through the game. But I personally really miss titles that I can dip into now and again and never feel like I'm falling behind or forgetting how to actually play it. PlayStation has just always been the place that I go for really well told story-driven games, and I just don't see enough of them in the current PlayStation 5 lineup. For that reason, I've mostly been using the PlayStation Portal recently to dip into EAFC. I'm not playing on Ultimate Team or anything like that because I really am not a fan of microtransactions, but playing some tournaments with Liverpool has been a nice way for me to reminisce about Jurgen Klopp as he leaves the club, and dipping into the DLC for God of War Ragnarok has been a nice way to keep my PlayStation 5 alive. But to be honest, because the PlayStation's library doesn't lend itself as well to handheld gaming, I'm often much more likely to pick up something like the Analog Pocket or the Nintendo Switch. The Analog Pocket is of course the extreme example there because the Game Boy games I've still got from my childhood were designed to be played in a handheld way. Because the Pocket has such a slim form factor, I can throw it into any bag and do a bit of grinding on my Pokemon Nuzlocke whenever I'm on the train. The Nintendo Switch has always just felt more like a handheld console to me. I've very rarely played it on the docked mode, and so I'm never shy of games I can find there which will be a great companion to me on a long journey. Neither of these systems rely on an internet connection, which is a big plus on the UK's rail network, and the Steam Deck is also a great companion for longer trips when I want a more powerful console while my parents are getting some quality time with Gabriel. For busy parents like me who just want access to their PlayStation 5 while their child is asleep or in the 1 or 2 hours they get free each evening, then the PlayStation Portal is a brilliant option. Consistent updates from Sony have made it much more resilient on different Wi-Fi networks, and the fact they keep on updating it adds a lot of optimism for the future of the system. At the same time, if you do want to branch out into other systems or explore a game library much wider than your PlayStation allows, especially in an offline setting, then the PlayStation Portal definitely isn't for you. Luckily, there are lots of other handheld devices out there that can maybe suit you a little bit better.